Welcome to the KOSEC Show. Join the KOSEC KODARI Securities team as they share their insights on the Australian share market, discussing some of their best performing companies, macroeconomic news from offshore, including local domestic news, foreign exchange, as well as commodities. If you have any questions regarding the share market, our phone lines are open. You can dial in on 1300 854 151 or alternatively email info@kosec.com.au. Exclusively on this show, each guest will reveal their hottest stock pick. For more information on any of the topics discussed, go to kosec.com.au. The information featured in this program is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances, needs, or objectives. Guests appearing on the program may own or have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.
Good afternoon, investors. My name is Will Brownlee, and welcome to the KOSEC Show, where we discuss all things relevant in the market this week. Macroeconomic data, currencies and commodities, top performance for the week that was, and of course, our hottest stock picks for the week to come. As always, before I go any further, allow me to introduce my investment panel and resident experts on the market. To my left, the ever wonderful Caroline Wong, the ever stoic Gabrielle Ryan, and of course, our senior trader, Lin Sin Cao. Right, let's kick things off straight away. On the tip of everyone's tongue is we've gone back into lockdown again. Certainly, we've gone back into lockdown in Victoria. That takes effect from tonight. Is that right?
Very poor timing.
Yeah.
Or very unfortunate timing,
Right
I guess.
before Valentine's Day.
Yep.
Right before Valentine's Day.
Right into the weekend, right before Valentine's Day. Also, Chinese New Year. So let's just add everything to that.
Not good. I'm sorry. Obviously, it's a tricky decision to make.
It is,
and
yeah.
I do understand that. And I do understand that there's a lot at stake. People's lives. But can they just decide like that? How long can this just keep going on? Whenever we get some... whenever we get things, is it just going to jump back in and we're just going to lock everything back down again?
I think short answer, yes, they can decide
I
that.
mean, the precedent is set. It's all locked in. They're ready to go. And they've clearly illustrated that pretty clearly today.
On the other hand, New South Wales doing exceptionally well. Caroline, we are on our...
26 days.
26
days of zero COVID cases. So we're doing quite. Well, I mean, we just said the same thing happened with the northern beaches, and then all of a sudden everything kind of got sparked back up again. But where are we sitting at? I mean, I know we've gone into lockdown. Whereabouts are we sitting at with the vaccinations and that kind of front there, Gabe?
Well, I guess there was some news that came out. It was earlier this week or towards the tail end of last week that we do have, or they're anticipating a rollout by the end of next month.
Okay.
Beginning next month. And then by October, there should be enough supply there to effectively have everyone inoculated.
Okay. So we're anticipating everyone getting inoculated by...
There's actually a questionnaire you can fill in. I forgot the site, but you fill in a few details and it'll tell you when your estimated time of inoculation will be. And I've actually forgotten mine, but it was somewhere in the middle of the year.
Oh, really? So you can actually... That's an interesting...
Yeah, it's a broad estimate. It's based on... It's predominantly age, because I don't think any of us have any underlying health conditions. So it really is just age for us.
Do you want to let's ramp the controversy up a little bit on the show today? If you were going to get a vaccination, which one would you pick, Caroline?
AstraZeneca.
You like AstraZeneca? Why?
Wait,
is
this because you have to pay for it, or is it?
Yeah, you go.
So AstraZeneca is actually part of this group where they actually offer cheap vaccines.
Yes.
So it's actually $3 or so.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's actually very economical.
Oh, very good. And what about yourself, Mr. Ryan?
Probably need more research to get back at you.
That was just code for I'm too tough for a vaccine.
Pour over the medical data just to see exactly where that places in the broader
joke,
context.
Yeah, there's a joke going around the office that if I catch COVID, they're going to sit there and say, mate, that's the healthiest thing about you. So I don't know if I need one of those. What about yourself, Mr. Cow? What are you looking at?
Well, I assumed that you were shouting since you offered. So given that we're investors and traders, highest percentage, you go with the Pfizer or you go with the Moderna?
Okay, so you go with the Pfizer or you go with the Moderna. Not Johnson & Johnson, even though you only need one jab. You're scared of needles, one jab?
No, I'm actually okay with
You're
needles.
okay with needles?
That's fine.
Why am I not?
I'd rather have the higher percentage.
Yep, that is a very, very fair call. Let's get things a little bit more serious, because I know Etihad that's actually come out with an announcement that they are going to be the first completely vaccinated airline crew. Did anyone else read that?
The crew.
Yeah. So the cabin crew and the pilots are going to be the very first crew that are completely vaccinated. Okay, which means if you go and you fly with Etihad, you are going to be actually flying with a crew that's
okay.
completely,
It's actually pretty smart.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Let's take it a little bit more to do with the stock market. Now I'll go over to Mr. Cow. Talk to us about what's happening, because things are just going up all over the place. There is a lot of people saying this is the everything rally. What do we mean by the everything rally?
I was actually going to ask you because I hadn't heard that one. Let's just go straight to charts though. So let's start off with the, what do I call it? The global rally chart. So you can see here, now keep in mind that this is actually the MSCI Global Index. It's not the ASX or the S&P 500, but you can see here, as of earlier this week, how many consecutive up days is that? That's 8 that we're doing there. So again, it's a nice streak of gains. Did take a little bit of a breather this week. The S&P 500 was up, I think, about 0.5% as of now. Not as much as last week, but still in that upward trajectory. On top of that, if we move on to another chart, the reflation trade chart. Now, this may look a little bit complicated. What we can see here, and maybe this is a little bit more medium term, but just as a quick precursor, reflation generally means that as the market expects the economy to pick up, the yield curve, so should apply to all of them, but let's talk about sovereign yields, government bonds. That should normalize. It just means it should be more upward sloping. Generally, if it's flat or downward sloping, that does not portend well for the broader economy. But if the market expects inflation to return, then you would get that normalizing curve. However, you can see here that as the 10-year Treasury yield rises, that blue line, the gap between it and the earnings yield on the S&P 500 is actually narrowing. Now, not anything to worry about anytime soon, but eventually, if that gap closes, bonds relatively are going to become more attractive than equities. We may see a rotation into those. Having said that, it is a while away.
Yeah,
and on top of that,
bonds have to go. What's a bond trading at now?
Yeah, I mean, it's still very low.
Very,
I mean,
very
I was
low.
just talking about back when I was building models at Macquarie, not like Lego models, but financial models.
Yeah.
And so I was using risk-free rates of, I think, 5.56%. And right now it's 1.2%.
1.2%. So basically, to say that there's going to be a cycle into bonds, I'm not saying you're wrong, and I understand that, and obviously I've studied it as well, so we know all about it. There can be that cycle into bonds, and I remember a lot of people say the old 60-40 bond equity portfolio mix. Big cycle into bonds. We've got to basically convince investors, or to go into a bond, you have to convince the investor that the market's not going to go up as much as a bond, that disregard gold, copper, all the other commodities, all the other investments, housing, everything, Bitcoin, you name it. You've got to disregard all that and go into a yielding bond, which at the moment it's doing about 1.2.
Yeah, it's so far down the track. Really, I actually interpret this more as the reflation trade is being fed into the market in a way that they believe, and that's why the yield curve is normalizing. And also, it's probably worth noting that over the past few years, that 60-40 portfolio has kind of gone out the window because equities and bonds were going up together.
Yeah.
So
a little bit everything. The whole investing landscape has changed.
Yeah.
Yes,
you love that phrase.
Very good. All right, let's go over to Gabe. Yes. Because you've been keeping a very, very close eye on what's happening over in the US.
Sure.
A lot of earnings reports stimulating their market. I mean, the Nasdaq's on an all-time high.
Record highs.
Yep. Tesla did some interesting stuff. What's been the highlights of the reports?
A lot of interesting stuff. Well, I guess drawing on a point that we discussed last week, 97% of tech companies, I believe, beat analysts' earnings expectations. That's continued to be reflected throughout the week. So I think we saw PayPal do very well, eBay as well. We had Disney reporting as well. Now, I think their results were actually slightly, in terms of their earnings, were a little bit less than what was initially anticipated. But the increase in their subscriber base for Disney Plus was so positive that we did see some pretty good movements there. I think they had 146 million subscribers to their paid subscription.
Wow.
You can imagine 146 million people.
How many of them do you think signed up just to get the Mulan movie that came out and then realized they had to pay for it?
Well, this
they've had to pay extra for it.
Hard to say for certain, but yeah, certainly a lot of positive movements there being driven by those earnings.
Very, very good. Anything that's happening here that you've been noticing, good positive earnings here in Australia that have been reflective of that?
Well, we have seen like a lot of positive earnings reports throughout this week. And actually have to take into account expectations here, of course.
So it's all about that, is expectations.
So we did see Baby Bunting today with a pretty nominally positive report, up their dividend and NPAT up. few other financial
Market.
metrics
So that
up.
they would have gone up quite a bit today then, yes?
No, actually, no, they went down, unfortunately. Again,
So
one of the
that's a
situations.
perfect, I mean, I would say that's a perfect example of something that's
Expectations.
expectations.
Yeah, captured market share, expanding into New Zealand. No.
No,
Mm-mm.
no,
You,
don't-
you,
don't-
you would
don't want
assume
it.
that expansion would have positive implications for the company's earnings moving forward. However, maybe the market may not be that efficient or forward thinking, or maybe they are factoring in unknown information. So, something to
Yeah.
consider.
And we did have a very impressive run up just before this
It
report.
did, yeah.
though.
Yes,
Like,
it
It
did.
did have it was on a bit of a tear towards the north. Let's talk about next week, because next week is literally huge. We have got, what have we got on Monday? Our team reporting,
got
Beach,
Beach,
Energy
JB
report-
Hi-Fi, I
JB
believe.
Hi-Fi reporting. Then Wednesday we're on
Let me think.
So
Is-
many.
is-
so
Super
yeah,
retail,
let's just go with so many.
ARB.
So many.
so many. More than 3, but less than 3,000.
Yes.
Very good. Caroline, let's talk a little bit about one that did report very encouraging numbers, Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Now, they've announced that they're sort of upping their dividends. Is this a recurring theme that we're seeing? I know Baby Bunting upped its dividend. I would have thought that wouldn't have been the case if they're suffering in any way, that they would have sort of started to contract a dividend maybe. But talk to us about that perspective.
Actually, that fits into exactly to what I'm going to say right now. So if we look at the chart, so this chart shows the expected dividend payout for the XJO this year. So you can see that in 2021, there will be an expected rise, 15% rise in payouts. And this positivity is likely to carry on moving forward. And banks, as you said earlier, Will, they're expected to raise payments by about a third. This is because last year, APRA actually limited dividends to 50% of earnings. This was in July. However, as the economy rebounded, this restriction was lifted in December, which means to say that any corporate profits that will flow through will be reflected in the form of increased dividends.
So are you a buyer of the banks at the moment, Caroline?
As from the perspective of the firm, we don't look into these banks, but they are looking very good. In my recent research, it says that ANZ is likely to be posting the highest and most attractive dividend.
Okay, so that's quite unusual. Like normally, ANZ has never not been the best performer out of the banks. I've always known. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was always under the understanding that NAB paid the largest dividend. Commonwealth Bank was obviously the largest market cap. No one ever spoke about Westpac, and ANZ was sort of a little bit lower down. With that, anyone else heard that, or is that just me completely?
We'll go with that.
Yeah, go. Yeah, but everyone just smile and nod.
Yes.
Very, very good. So, is it going to keep going? That's the question on anyone's mind. I mean, I know there's a case to be made that we're near our all-time highs, but we're not on our all-time highs yet. We still haven't taken where we were a year ago. We're still down a bit, although it looks like it's only going to be a matter of time till it goes.
We're
back
still
up.
like 5% from our pre-pandemic high, and the US and Japan are well past their pre-pandemic highs. So
I know there's a case to be made for our own market. There's also a case to be made that if the US starts to struggle, we should also in turn struggle. Can the US keep going, or is it going to have a bit of a pullback? Gabe?
Very
Vincent.
very in-depth questions. I
Yes.
mean, look, it all depends on. So I guess yes and no, as Linton probably would say. It depends on a number of factors. I think broader risk on sentiment moving forward will probably see equities do pretty well. And yeah, I don't really see any reason, at least in the short term, why equities wouldn't do well.
Yeah, and obviously with keeping obviously the interest rates on low. Let's go over one more time the politics over in the USA. We've got Mr. Donald Trump on his second impeachment. Okay, old hat at this now. Any news on that front?
yeah, so the trial commenced this week. I think the opening arguments, they might have actually closed earlier today. I'm not sure about that, but I feel it's like in 3 days as the Democrat side have laid out their case. They did have a preliminary, I don't know if it's preliminary, but they had a vote on the constitutionality of it. And at the time, I think there was 6 Republicans who jumped over. So the vote was 56-44. Now, why is that significant? Short term, not at all. The reason, though, I mentioned that is because they need 17 Republicans to jump over to the other side in order to convict him. And if only 6 of them jumped over with the constitutionality, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to get the extra 11 they're going to need to actually convict him. So one thing that has come out, though, is that very succinct C-SPAN video that summarizes, okay, here's what he said, and here's what the protesters did. Then he said this, then they did that. So obviously selectively edited, but also pretty damning if you try to look at that as objectively as possible, I think.
there was some pretty interesting arguments that have certainly been made. I think people standing up and speaking in the House, some pretty well-versed people, some very intelligent people. You can sort of feel that these guys really know what they're talking about, yeah?
Apparently the Trump legal team were a little bit incoherent and all over the place, and that's reviews from both sides. So even Republicans were saying they just did not come across very well at all. I haven't had the chance to actually watch those videos though.
Too much stuff happening here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to take a video and email it through to info@kosec.com.au. Now, everyone who does this will receive a copy of our book, Stock Market Success, Retailing in Dymocks, for $39.95, or our magazine, Retailing in News Agencies Australia-wide, for $19.95. We're going to be back shortly with your currency and commodity overview.
As kids, we were active. We were creative. We questioned all things. We celebrated everything. We took risks. We had no limits. We had dreams. Our imagination helped us solve problems and create new possibilities. Albert Einstein once said, "Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions." We are in an ever-changing world filled with fear and uncertainty. Don't let that change the inner child within. As Walt Disney said, imagination has no age, and dreams are forever. KOSEC is here to help build your dreams and create possibilities. Secure your success with KOSEC KODARI Securities.
Throughout time, humans have relied upon innovation to advance and evolve, using new and improved methods, having meaningful impact on society and industries. In order to advance, ideas were transformed into new products and services. The stock market has also evolved through innovation. Innovation has been key to KOSEC's success. Using artificial intelligence and machine learning, KOSEC has streamlined processes to bring better opportunities to clients. Opportunities that might have otherwise been missed. Join a company that innovates to bring clients the best opportunities and service. Invest with a solid strategy. Invest with confidence. Invest with KOSEC. KODARI Securities.
How do you get the highest returns in the stock market on a consistent basis? Obsessed with this idea, Michael Kodari forms KOSEC, KODARI Securities. He seeks, in his own words, a revolutionary investment strategy based on better information and knowledge. Wealth begins with better knowledge, becomes his motto. He seeks to identify and accurately pick the next top performing stocks on the ASX. He seeks for consistency. Michael KODARI creates a unique stock market filtering system he names Lotus Blue, named after a flower that blooms just once. Because in investing, timing is everything. See how accurate KOSEC stock picks are. Get a free 7-day access to Lotus Blue today. If you want the KOSEC investment edge, you know what you have to do. Call KOSEC now or visit kosec.com.au and take advantage of the insights he reserves for his clients.
Do you follow currencies? Want to know how the Aussie dollar is travelling? Do you love commodities? Do you see gold prices rising? Do you see more demand for oil? Do you see the world economy growing? Get the latest in-depth analysis and discussion on commodities every week from real traders. Get real insights only on the KOSEC Show.
Welcome back. Let's talk about currencies and commodities, all things that shine, sparkle, fold, and make the world go around. We'll start off by taking a quick look at the charts of gold and oil, and we're going to bounce over to Mr. Cow, who's going to have a quick chat to us about that. What's happening in those two spaces at the moment?
All right, I mean, oil, what was it, like 6 days in a row that it made a 12-month high?
Terrific.
It has taken a little bit of a breather, but it is still very much on that uptrend.
0.5% down, hardly that.
Exactly.
Much,
So, I mean, it is maybe just a breath,
yes.
but it has not turned around.
Yeah, right.
Maybe is the way to do it. So, again, until you see it turn around on a technical basis, there's no reason to try to stand in the way. However, I have said many, many times on the podcast that you've always got that OPEC dynamic there. So it's always something that's potentially lurking in the background. If the price reaches a certain point, maybe they come out and start paring back on those output cuts. So that's something to watch for. But for now, I think that's clearly still in an upward trend. Gold, on the other hand, a little bit going sideways. It's hovering around its 200-day moving average. I don't really know if you can say this is an uptrend or a downtrend. I know we are all medium to long-term still bullish on gold. Haven't changed my mind on that.
I think gold's one of those ones that's on a good level of support at this level. It seems quite clear that it doesn't want to be sold down too much more from this sort of broad area.
Exactly. And I mean, Newcrest did report yesterday, and it was yesterday, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the week just flies by. But it was positively received by the market.
So
Northern Star
reported
exactly.
very well as
Also, record NPAT, record free cash flows, record EBITDA, increased dividend. So specific again, if you can get the right stocks in that sector, then there is upside and gains to be had there. And maybe just to round it off before we transition over, let's bring up that commodities super cycle chart. So I mean that's pretty self-explanatory. And I mean a super cycle, I don't know the exact formula that goes into that, but it does sound pretty good. So if that actually does play out, then that should be, I think we've already spoken about it on the podcast previously, but 2021 is meant to be a good year for commodities overall.
Very good. In terms of Gabe, I suppose Gabe,
Yes.
and Linson too, if you can add a comment. Do we have any price targets from some big institutions on oil or on gold?
Yeah, well, there are quite a few price targets on gold moving forward. I can't put the title of the insto to the actual price, but I know they range from around 2,100 to around 2,400.
Okay, so that's pretty that's a lot higher than what it's currently trading. What about oil? I thought it was just 66 from.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Goldman Sachs has a target for Brent and WTI at around 65, 66 moving forward. They're anticipating that it averages that throughout the year as well.
And we've got, and I think I heard from I heard from one of our directors here that copper, most firms that produce copper are profitable if they can sell copper for more than $5,000 per.
That's right. Yeah. So
and it's now at 8,000. Is that right?
I don't recall the exact figures, but it was significant. It was trading significantly higher than the break even.
And of course, copper considered to be a bit of a bellwether of what's going to happen.
Yeah, very much probably the ultimate risk on of the metals, and I think it's near an 8-year high as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that stuff sort of going on. Let's go over to Caroline because, as always, you have a good chat to us about iron ore. What have you got your eye on this week? Are we still bullish on it? Is it coming back? What do we think?
My eye is still on ore.
Okay, your eye is still on ore. Very good.
Okay, we look at the chart. It's still trading above $160 a ton. 5 green candlesticks this week, 5 consecutive green candlesticks. So it's very bullish. And Credit Suisse actually forecasted the price of iron ore to continue trading above $150 a ton for the rest of 2021. But more importantly, I want to focus about the local iron ore miners because Bloomberg and UBS actually came up with a dividend forecast for our local iron ore miners. Yep. So we look at the charts, you can see that the dark blue column reflects that of the first half 2021 dividends, which we will know next week. And you can see that the columns, they are much higher than that of the prior 6 months, especially in the case of Rio Tinto. So, and 6 months ago, their dividend payout was $2.15. This is expected to double. Hopefully next week we'll see the results. But for investors who like to get into these companies, they will be reporting BHP on the 16th, Rio Tinto on the 17th, and Fortescue Metal on the 18th.
Very, very good. Quite encouraging numbers and potentially they're coming out. I want to cycle over to currency, commodity. Don't know what we call it right now, but it is all over the news right now, having reached a new all-time high today. And of course, it is Bitcoin. Gabe, you keep your eye on it. We still remain undecided whether you're actually a true bull or a bear on the business, and we can get some guesses happening. But you are very well equipped as knowing what's your take on it at the moment? What do you think's happening with this Bitcoin stuff?
Okay, well, I want to clarify that it was Bitcoin you were talking about there. Well, we saw Elon Musk and Tesla announce that they purchased around $1.5 billion worth of it. I don't know the exact time horizon for that, but that did have some pretty positive impacts on.
You can buy a car, and he says he will accept Bitcoin payment for.
Yeah, potentially for the Tesla 3 models or for.
So you go over to Tesla and you give him 2 Bitcoin, and he'll give you a car back.
Exactly. I guess.
So what is it, like a USB stick that you just hand over? And then...
Yeah. So most crypto is actually stored on a wallet. Okay, but you can also store it on an exchange as well. Yeah.
I guess the.
But surely it'd be a transfer, wouldn't it? It'd be just the same as a.
I imagine much in the same way that you would facilitate any other transaction, there would be an exchange of some kind.
Or you could go to the Deutsche. I know Deutsche Bank's got a crypto ATM machine where you can actually pull out cash from crypto. Is that right?
Well, I haven't seen one of those myself, but I'll take your word.
I think it's over in the US, obviously not here in Australia. But anyway, continue. I digress.
Well, I guess. The main thing to draw from this is, aside from all the memes which have surfaced on the internet from it, is probably just incorporating that into the broader, the context of adoption of Bitcoin moving forward. So people pay Elon Musk out for being a bit of a weirdo. Maybe he's a bit of a contrarian. But I think, the guy has a brain which is significantly more developed than probably the average person. So maybe he sees something in Bitcoin, which is why he decided to buy $1.5 billion worth of it.
Probably on the Joe Rogan podcast
on top of that,
right now. Talking.
On top of that, you have a Bank of New York Mellon corporation actually holding, transferring, and issuing Bitcoin and other cryptos on behalf of asset managers, clients moving forward. So I think this is part of a broader trend we're seeing towards digital assets, at least now for the short term, provided there isn't some sort of astronomical cataclysm of epic proportions, which really has negative implications for the price of Bitcoin moving forward.
Because what's it done in the past 12 days or so? It's something, Ashram, 60%.
I don't know, 60%, something like that in the past 7 days, yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's done, let's just take it over the month. Let's just say 60% in the past month. That means if you put $100,000 into Bitcoin, you would make 60 grand in a week or in a month. Yep. But that is very, very, very good returns for any type of asset. Whether the risk-reward ratio is really there for an individual investor, I'm not going to be one of the ones that's going to judge that. Nor am I going to start asking questions like, how far can it go or how high can it go or anything like that, because who knows? What I am going to ask, though, is probably a more prevalent question. Is it a time that we accepted that it is getting accepted by major institutions and that there are bright people out there that are buying it for big investment banks? And is it something that you should look at acquiring or getting into? What do you think?
I mean, the second part is you have to pay attention to it, but then it's the chicken and the egg, right? So why is Boney Mellon a custodian getting into it? Because there is demand from their clients.
Right.
Why are institutions? Because there is demand from their clients. Now, that doesn't mean that they necessarily believe in it strongly. It doesn't mean that they don't believe in it. But if your clients have a demand for something, it is in your interest to try to cater to that demand. I'm quite sure that a lot of these institutions are immediately hedging a significant portion of their exposures to these cryptocurrencies, probably collecting a very nice margin as well along the way.
Because there was an announcement made today that a big gold producer said that you should hedge Bitcoin by buying gold. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was. I think that was the chief exec of Newcrest and Evolution.
Shock horror! He said you should buy gold. What? Never would have guessed that.
There's no reason why that would be. I feel, but yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it makes sense. And one point that he made, actually, I think it was Sandeep Biswas, who's the chief exec at Newcrest, said that it's moving fundamentally in tandem because the same factors are driving upward movements in Bitcoin, inflation expectations, things of that nature. So potentially both benefiting from those global factors.
Well, there we go. I think many conversations to be had about Bitcoin in the future. But for now, that's commodities and currencies and the events that have shaped them. Now, are you a bull or a bear? Let us know. Our phone lines are now open. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we're going to take a look at the best and worst performers on the Australian market this week.
The world changed this year. So did the stock market. Is it time for a change in your portfolio? Invest with confidence. Invest with a solid strategy. Invest with KOSEC, KODARI Securities.
RBA has cut interest rates to a record low of 0.1%. Returns in saving accounts are now shockingly low. We have never seen these conditions before. The good news is that the stock market benefits from low interest rates and historically has outperformed property or any other asset class. KOSEC uses a unique stock market filtering system called Lotus Blue, which helps generate solid profits for clients. During COVID in April 2020, KOSEC recommended Kogan, which went up 340%. In June, KOSEC recommended Saracen Minerals, which went up 23%. In October, KOSEC recommended Nickel Mines, which went up 33%. If you want your money working overtime, you need to know what stocks to buy and when to sell. That's where KOSEC can help. With no barriers to entry, it's just simple investing. Build wealth with a concrete investment strategy. Go to kosec.com.au. Get a free 7-day access to Lotus Blue and receive our top 8 stock picks today.
Throughout time, humans have relied upon innovation to advance and evolve, using new and improved methods. having meaningful impact on society and industries. In order to advance, ideas were transformed into new products and services. The stock market has also evolved through innovation. Innovation has been key to KOSEC's success. Using artificial intelligence and machine learning, KOSEC has streamlined processes to bring better opportunities to clients. Opportunities that might have otherwise been missed. Join a company that innovates to bring clients the best opportunities and service. Invest with a solid strategy. Invest with confidence. Invest with KOSEC. KODARI Securities.
Let's move on to our next section now and have a look at what the best and worst performers of the week were. And we are going to take a quick trip straight over to Caroline. You've got your little chart there. Have a quick chat with us about what kind of moved this week. What did we do well in?
So for the local share market, we didn't do too well this week. We're down 1%, but still trading above the 6,800 levels. We look straight into the chart. The best performer this week was materials, up 0.7%. As Linson said earlier, Newcrest Mining had a very good report. Good first half report, 121% increase in earnings and record half-year cash flows to 440 million. And the worst performer this week was industrials, down 0.7%, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad.
But a lot of it was done by CIMIC Group Limited, ticker code CIM.
That had a
horrific drop.
That had a rough day. That certainly had a rough day.
So the report wasn't well received by investors, clearly missed expectations. It was down by more than 20% this week.
Excellent. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Well, listen, before we get into sort of where we think there could be some potential growth, we've actually got a question that's been emailed in. So I'm going to go to that right now. Video question. Would love to hear what your guys' thoughts on the recent sell-off of Appen Technology, to code APX, due to slowing growth, which they've attributed largely to COVID. The stock could present a buying opportunity, given that they can bounce back. Do you see other risks, such as competitors taking from Appen's market share? Yes, 100% correct, and very, very astute. Obviously, that share has come down a lot from what it was, broken out of its trends, and really, really moved down in a bit of a death spiral. Linson, is it now time to be looking at acquiring it? I know it's something that we've sort of been dipping our toes in with that, in an area where we consider to be fair value. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it is a fair value, probably, yes. Is this the turnaround? I think earlier this week there was a day where it was up 4%.
5%. It was up.
Yeah,
No,
so
it was up nearly 7 or something.
Was
wasn't
it? Okay.
I can't remember, but it was up. It was because it had a similar day. Data 3 had a similar day as Appen today.
Today, yeah, it did.
So the tech sort of that, and that's the big thing, isn't it? These stocks can move, and I think for the investor who posted this question, this is a stock that can run. This is a stock that can really move in a positive direction, and we're talking 5 days, 3 days in a row. So 15%, it is not uncommon. I saw it do, I think I've seen it do 30% back in 2017. I think I saw it do 30% over 2 days. That being said, I also saw A2 Mil do the same thing. So, I suppose everything has the capacity to do that. What are your thoughts, Gabe?
Well, again, I think this is something which I mentioned last week when we were talking about I think maybe the very same point, or potentially the week before that. It is pretty heavily sold off. I think it's around 45-50% from the highs that it was at in August. So it's a pretty sharp line down, essentially. And over in the US, a lot of tech companies are reporting it well, really beating expectations. Expectations for Appen may be, slightly beneficial in terms of a prospective investor, given that it's already been sold off so heavily. How much further is it going to be sold down? It might be reluctant to get pushed down further. Again, it might report very well and beat expectations as well.
Exactly right. And do you know when it's reporting, Caroline?
24th.
24th. So that is tail end of next week or start of the week? So tail end of.
No, it's actually 2 weeks from
weeks away.
now.
It's 2 weeks away. So we're in the almost into the last week. Cheapers. Last week of February. 2 months through the year. Thank you very much for scaring me when I say something along the lines of that. Let's talk about the fundamentals, because obviously we look at a company like Appen Technology and we automatically think macroeconomic environment. Obviously it's involved in language translation. That's a bit of a tick. We also then look at the fundamentals of the company and we need to see if they line up. What are the fundamentals like, Caroline, of Appen?
It's very, very solid, which is also why it's part of our Lotus Blue investment portal. 3 years or more consecutive increase in earnings, ROE, and cash flow.
Very good. And it is an ASX 200 stock, as always. So I hope that answers your question. Keep the questions coming, team. Always interested, always happy. Gives us something to speak about. Okay, and obviously pick our brains for absolutely anything that we can go. We'd all agree with that, yes? Very good. So let's take a quick switch over to dividends. And I want to go to Gabe. Is it time to be cycling into dividend stocks? Is it a risk? What's as everyone's sort of upping dividends? What are your thoughts on those dividend sort of players? Would you want to go growth as we come out of this reporting season, or would you want to go into more dividends? What do you think?
I think that the main thing to probably consider when you're examining dividend stocks, is probably that even if you buy it, it's not going to be, most likely a very steady movement sideways or up. If you're buying a stock for its dividends, you're going to be subject to movements in the share price of the company, which is a given, of course.
So that could be quite good. Sorry to interject.
It can be good. It can be bad as well. So a lot of the better dividend-paying stocks, they may not have really positive movements in their share price. Even though you're accumulating the dividend, the actual value of your position is continuously going in a negative direction. Not saying that that's going to happen, but it's just something to consider, I think.
So if you buy it for the dividend and you think the dividend's 6%, but the stock goes down 7%, you actually come out with a net loss.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fairly intuitive and that's fairly obvious. But is that likely to happen with a lot of dividend paying stocks, or?
Well, it depends where you're looking. Certain mining companies certainly pay good dividends, and moving forward, we're looking at metals, which tend to be, or rather the consensus is that they're going to do very well moving forward. If the price of the commodity goes up, earnings expectations for the company will probably go up as well. And generally speaking, if they're making more money, they may reflect that in the dividend payments. So probably something to watch moving forward.
Just in terms of that sort of commodity, because you did touch on that right there, I'm going to cycle over to Mr. Cow, because there you were talking a little bit about a global commodity rally.
Super cycle.
Super cycle.
Yes.
Now that's to do, you mentioned this morning that it might be something to do with Elliott waves as well, which is where obviously we have 5 ups and 3 downs, cycle sort of up. Any more sort of news on what this means for our commodity and what commodities?
Yeah, so actually I'm going to bring up a chart again, but it's not going to be the super cycle one. Okay. It's going to be that reflation trade one. And here's the reason why. So I think we've said it several times on the podcast that commodities tend to act as a hedge against inflation potentially. Yes. I mean, they say that about cryptocurrencies too. But let's focus on the commodities. So
let's not open that can of worms again. Let's not go back there.
So one thing that was interesting about this, now maybe this is getting a little bit too nerdy, so I won't go too deeply into it. But if you think about how businesses are actually valued by, say, large institutions, they use a discounted cash flow model. They're discounting the future cash flows to the present day. If long-term interest rates were to rise, that would mean that the future cash flows are actually discounted at a greater rate. So that would tend to favor businesses that derive more of their value from nearer term cash flows, as opposed to those that derive their value from future growth and future cash flows. So if you really took that to its conclusion, I'm not saying that we are immediately reacting to this now, but if you took that to its conclusion, you would argue that cyclicals, stuff like commodities, would do better than, say, something like tech, which is more a growth stock. Again, it's not something that the firm is immediately cycling out of now, but that was something that I read that I thought was quite interesting.
Okay, so if there is going to be this cycle in there, obviously all the commodities are not equal. Some are going to do exceptionally well, some aren't going to do so well. Gabe, if you had to pick a commodity that you think is going to do particularly well, which one would you pick and why?
Probably nickel.
Nickel?
Yep, I really like nickel. I like how it fits into that, macroeconomic context. Again, we're anticipating a deficit this year of potentially 18,000 tons. Last year, there was a surplus of around 86,000 from a report believe it was Roskill. And, moving forward, there are so many drivers of demand. You got EVs, stainless steel growth, as well, or demand for stainless steel, rather, as Caroline has brought before, this infrastructure-led recovery in China. We could see nickel continuously do well this year, and I think even moving forward as well. Something, I don't know if I brought this up, but last week, Tesla is having some issues scaling certain projects for their new cars. I think it's their super truck, not the one that Elon Musk accidentally smashed the window on, the almost like a semi-trailer, right?
Yes, right, yeah.
And it requires 5 times more cells. And the issue they're having is that they can't really scale it effectively because the actual cost of the materials which go into the battery are significantly higher, that it's really going to impact their margins in the same degree. And now with every single, car manufacturer jumping on the bandwagon of EVs, that's really going to have, I think, implications for demand moving forward.
Very, very good. So that was the best and the worst of the ASX this week. Now, do you have a stock that you've been watching for a while? Is it time to buy, sell, or maybe average in? Why not send us a message and we can ask our panel? In the meantime, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back with our final section of the show.
How do you get the highest returns in the stock market on a consistent basis? Obsessed with this idea, Michael KODARI forms KOSEC, KODARI Securities. He seeks, in his own words, a revolutionary investment strategy based on better information and knowledge. Wealth begins with better knowledge, becomes his motto. He seeks to identify and accurately pick the next top-performing stocks on the ASX. He seeks for consistency. Michael KODARI creates a unique stock market filtering system he names Lotus Blue, named after a flower that blooms just once. Because in investing, timing is everything. See how accurate KOSEC stock picks are. Get a free 7-day access to Lotus Blue today. If you want the KOSEC investment edge, you know what you have to do. Call KOSEC now or visit kosec.com.au and take advantage of the insights he reserves for his clients.
Trust is key to any relationship. Fortunately, it's nothing that can be bought. It's earned. As an investor working with an organisation, they need to demonstrate integrity. They must show consistency, full transparency, accountability. They must be genuine in their approach. Their core values must align with yours. They need to put your interest first. If you are considering investing, work with an organisation that earns and nurtures trust. Work with an organisation you believe in. Work with an organisation that treats you the same way they like to be treated. Join an organisation that views clients as people, not people as clients. If you are considering investing, consider KOSEC KODARI Securities.
As kids, we were active. We were creative. We questioned all things. We celebrated everything. We took risks. We had no limits. We had dreams. Our imagination helped us solve problems and create new possibilities. Albert Einstein once said, "Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions." We are in an ever-changing world filled with fear and uncertainty. Don't let that change the inner child within. As Walt Disney said, imagination has no age and dreams are forever. KOSEC is here to help build your dreams and create possibilities. Secure your success with KOSEC KODARI Securities.
Welcome back. The moment we've all been waiting for, the final section of the KOSEC Show. So let's take a look at what our panel is looking at in the week to come. But before we do that, we've actually got another question that's been emailed in, and this one pertains to a stock. So it's a bit of a stock related one. We've got the question saying, "Hello guys, great podcast. Given the amount of money printing and continuous stimulus that's occurring worldwide, would you say inflation is a potential threat?" I think we've already answered that a little bit earlier in the day in the podcast. And if so, would you expect commodities to do well? We've also answered that as well. Would you expect agriculture commodities to also benefit? And what do you think of the stock Select Harvest to play this theme? Interesting. All right, guys, put your thinking caps on. Select Harvest. Let's go over to Caroline, explain a little bit about what Select Harvest does.
So Select Harvest, ticker code SHV, it's an almond producer. It also manufactures a variety of snacks. So in my opinion, it faces risks on two fronts. So firstly, on a global scale, Australia is the number 2 producer of almonds globally, and we follow behind America.
Almonds. We're talking almonds.
Yep,
Yeah. Okay,
almonds.
right.
Not
Just-
INR.
Okay,
Okay, so we follow behind America. But what
I
happened?
can't remember the last time I've eaten an almond, but I digress.
You're not a very healthy person, are
No, I'm
you?
clearly not very healthy. I should get some almonds into me. Yeah,
Okay, so
continue.
back to Select Harvest. Last year there were forecasts that US will have a record almond crop, which means to say that there will be softening of almond prices in Australia and for Select Harvest itself. But also on a local scale, they have challenges as it relates to market access. They operate 3 almond orchards across 3 states, but these were subjected to border closures, which means to say that movements were limited. And then the second time Melbourne encountered into a lockdown,
Yes.
Select Harvest was also impacted because their head office is situated in Melbourne.
Very good. Let's go to Mr. Cow. Talk to us about the charts, because obviously that's obviously what the business does. What's your take on the charts at the moment on Select Harvest?
Well, it doesn't look awesome, does it? So it is making those lower highs and lower lows, which is the opposite of what we like to see. Having said that, you could say that
Financially
earlier this
healthy,
week,
though. Relatively financially stable and healthy business.
it is a Lotus Blue stock,
It is
so
a
it is
Lotus
one that
Blue
we
stock.
cover.
ASX 200, 300?
300.
300, ASX 300. So some measure of financial stability in
Yeah,
there.
it
but-
has made that higher high now, and the Williams alligator mouth looks like it could be starting to open, and that MACD has remained positive.
Yes.
So there is a silver lining there. I don't know whether this is the time to be trying to catch it, although if you did get in at the right time, potentially
You could do very,
decent
very well
upside
with it.
there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it'd be something that you'd want to see a little bit more movement towards the north, maybe
Yeah,
a few more.
for this particular one, yes, it's certainly not a terrible idea. I mean, just to tie it back into the macro story, what we were talking about before, with commodities acting as a hedge against inflation, that certainly encompasses also agricultural commodities. So certainly, all of the way the question was structured made perfect logical sense. I think all the reasoning flows quite nicely.
Very nice. Perfect. Well, I hope that answered your question, guys. Once again, keep the questions coming. We are more than happy to sit here and analyze any stocks that you guys throw at us or want to have a quick chat about. But let's go to see what Caroline is looking at this week. What do you like this week for the week to come? What's your sort of stock pick?
Are you not saving the best for the last?
I'm saying I'm doing. Wow, ouch. I'm doing the best first. I'm giving the best first.
So I go.
Yep.
So my opportunity this week is Data3 Limited, ticker code DTL.
Okay.
ASX 300 company. It's a leading IT services provider which provides solutions across connectivity, modern workplace, as well as cloud.
Now that's obviously up 5% today, so you anticipate that it could keep running from here, yes?
Mm-hmm. So macroeconomically, it finds itself playing a very crucial role in a pandemic as it relates to accelerating the delivery of remote workplace solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So people who have to work from home, they use software and solutions provided by Data3. Data3 is also the largest reseller of Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's some macroeconomic factors.
Yes, correct. In terms of financials, it's very fundamentally sound company. Sales, cash flow, earnings increasing for the past 3 years. In terms of the technical charts, if we look at the chart, it has broken out of its sideways trending pattern today, touching the top Donchian channel. Stochastic and MACD are both positive and diverging, which means to say that it could potentially move in a positive direction moving forward.
Very good. So that's...
Oh, wait, one more question.
No, right.
One more point. It will be reporting next Thursday.
Very good. Very in-depth. Great analysis on the end of that. So would you like to go next, or would we like to save the best for last?
I think we should save the best for last and let me go first.
Okay, brilliant.
I'll go first.
All right, Mr. Cow. I'll split the difference. What do you like this week? What are you looking at the moment?
I've mentioned it before, BHP. So it ties into the whole commodity story. Obviously, world's largest mining company by market cap.
As opposed to Fortescue Metal, which is pure iron ore, this has also got some other commodities.
I do actually like the look of Fortescue Metals as well. I just thought a little bit of variety. Let's go with BHP. Again, they do derive almost half of their revenues from iron ore, and then almost half of the rest is coming from copper, which, as we mentioned before, is very much a risk-on commodity near its 8-year highs. Now, since the last time I spoke about it, there have been a few updates in terms of institutional broker reports. So just a couple, what date are we on? 12th?
We are on the 12th. Yes.
Okay, so 3 days ago, JP Morgan lifted their iron ore forecast. I think it was 6%, if I recall correctly. And they flagged potentially, and this is not insider news, so grain of salt, they flagged potentially an on-market buyback with some of the excess cash. And last week, about a week ago, Macquarie expects strong results, again, driven by iron ore exposure. And of course, if we look at it technically, it has pulled back from that relative high, now looking to return to the upper Donchian channel. So again, when we see those higher lows and higher highs, if you see it pull back and then resume, that's generally, not only is it positive, it's also less risky as well. You kind of know where your stop losses are supposed to go, so you know when to get out if the thesis proves to be wrong. On top of that, the stochastic oscillator is also heading up after touching oversold. So I think I still like BHP.
And to be fair with you, this was actually a fan question. Someone actually emailed in, an investor emailed in, or sent a video in, I believe, and actually asked about BHP a while ago.
Oh, right. Okay.
It was about, you probably can't remember, we have quite a few of them, but it was a while ago. They actually, actually asked a question about whether we'd be buyers of BHP. And at that time, we were a buyer as well as now. So that's good to see that we are consistent. Right. I've saved the best for last. And I want to know what you are going to look at this time, Mr. Ryan, because you spoke a lot about the commodity of nickel.
Yeah.
I don't suppose that's got any bearing on what your pick for the day is.
Yeah, well, spoiler alert, yeah, it did. So I really like the look of the nickel mines as a nickel player, something I brought in a few months ago, Lindsay's brought as well. I think it just fits the environment pretty perfectly moving forward. For points I mentioned in the previous section, but just for your reference, nickel demand is anticipated to increasingly grow. Stainless steel, EVs, being those key drivers, particularly the EV batteries as well. On top of that, a potential deficit in the supply this year. And again, the cream on top of the cake being the metals rally, which we may see this year as well. So everything seems to be moving together in confluence. And on a technical basis, I really like the chart as well, if you want to pull that up. Now, they recently went ex-div. I think it might have been a couple of weeks ago. And it seems to be reluctant to be sold that any further than where it currently is at around $1.20. It is showing an oversold condition on the stochastic RSI. I feel that this will continue to either hold that and then begin to move back in a positive direction alongside nickel and nickel futures, which are moving in a very positive direction as well, provided there are no other major negatives which could potentially rear their ugly heads. Aside from that, I'm pretty bullish on nickel mines. I think it'll continue to do well.
Very good. So we have Data 3, we have nickel mines, and of course we have BHP. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in this week. On behalf of everyone at the show, I want to wish our clients, friends, and colleagues a safe and happy weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next week on the show. My name is Will Brownlee, and this has been the KOSEC Show.